frightened Spokane to the point that parents dealt with their children being out alone differently.
We begin tonight with a case that forever changed the Spokane Police Department. Thank you for joining us here for KREM 2 News at 6. I'm Whitney Ward.
Welcome everyone, I'm Mark Hanrahan. Today marks 63 years since one of the area's most notorious crimes, the kidnapping and murder of 9-year-old Candy Rogers.
Now, Candy was a 4th grader at Holmes Elementary School when she vanished back in 1959. She was out selling campfire mints in West Central Spokane. And for 16 days, Candy's disappearance gripped the entire city as volunteers and police officers searched for her. Also, 3 Fairchild airmen died in a helicopter crash as part of that search. But after her body was found beaten and raped 7 miles from her home, it launched what would become the biggest and longest police investigation in Spokane history.
She had a face that always had a smile on it.
Joanne Poss is one of the only remaining relatives of Candy Rogers, still living to remember her.
When she was little for her age.
Poss was only 13 when she learned her cousin Candy had been kidnapped and killed. She has never done a TV interview about the case or its impact on her family until now.
And Mom said, "Oh, they found Candy's body." She told me that she was dead. I thought, no, that doesn't happen.
And for 62 years, she says her family lived in that shadow.
We even sent an entire packet, probably a good inch thick, to America's Most Wanted.
I'm John Walsh.
Well, they sent the packet back with a very nice letter saying there wasn't enough to go on.
You must have at some point felt like all hope was lost.
Yes, I did. And I never, ever thought it was going to be solved.
Like, I remember talking to my grandma about it, but I just took it more as a warning than anything else.
Did it shape how you parented your children?
Oh, definitely. When they went out to play, #1 rule, keep this house in sight at all times. And it was hard. It still is. It's very hard, just knowing that her life was snuffed down so fast.
But suddenly, everything changed in November of 2021.
This is before the age of having cell phones.
Sergeant Zach Stormont is the Spokane police officer who announced to the world that decades of police work had finally paid off.
Even though this has been 62 years, this is still a very emotionally charged case.
What made you feel like this case was solvable?
Even before the science became available, we felt traditional investigation could find the way.
Was John Hoff's name anywhere?
Hoff's name was not anywhere in any records, no reports.
Spokane police were confident they had their man, but they were surprised to find John Ray Hoff was a man they'd never suspected before.
We got extremely lucky in that we got DNA from 1959. They had no concept of that at that time, and that's obviously what cracked the case, because otherwise I don't believe it would have ever been solved.
It's on old paper and it's all typed.
Detective Brian Hammond worked on the case until he retired in early 2021. 2 investigators in a long line of SPD officers never quite willing to give up on Candy's case.
Did it nag at you?
Yes, I didn't want to let it go. As cold cases go, they're not really in the forefront. You just pick at them when you get a chance.
It's kind of a lonely endeavor. If you're working on a cold case, you don't have anybody really to talk to about it, and he had to kind of shoulder that alone for a long time.
But for more than 60 years, Spokane investigators just kept chipping away.
We don't know what's going to be available to us 10 years from now.
Until they caught a break. Decades-old DNA evidence miraculously still intact in a mason jar.
They did a lot of bagging in plastic, which can destroy biological evidence. Putting it in the jar, put it in a kind of an airtight container.
How critical was it to this case that that evidence still existed and had been preserved all these years?
You can't put a value on it. It's beyond belief that it's almost accidental, but the fact that the key evidence got put in a mason jar is incredible.
Early last year, a forensic scientist at the state crime lab suggested sending it to a private genome sequencing company in Texas. And with a little help from public records like Ancestry, they built a DNA profile that led to John Hoff from Spokane, who had lived only a mile away from Candy. Detectives tracked down Hoff's now adult daughter, exhumed his body, and found their answer.
It's just really sad to find out that someone that, not even that just your dad, but just someone in your family could do something like that.
John Ray Hoff was only 20 at the time of Candy's disappearance. He was 31 when he committed suicide at his home in Spokane.
You've said that this hasn't necessarily brought closure to you.
No.
What has it brought?
It's not closure, but at least there's some form of satisfaction there knowing that the person that did it is at least named. He may be in a grave, but he's named.
And while Poss is relieved to finally have answers, she knows it's something Candy's parents never got.
They never saw him pay or die for it. They went to their grave not knowing. That was hard, very hard.
Still, she says the shadow of what happened to her family all those years ago has lifted now, making way for the next generation of Candy's family and legacy.
It really bothered me.
Poss's granddaughter, Emily, now a freshman at Gonzaga University, is pursuing her own career in forensics to help solve future crimes like Candy's.
And it just felt like something that I could really love doing, especially with the fact that it gives you something to do about all these people that don't get justice.
Both are now hoping when people hear the name Candy Rogers, they will no longer think of a terrible unsolved murder, but rather an endless pursuit for justice and a family who waited lifetimes for the truth.
Only God knows what she could have done if she had lived, but because she can't, if you can carry on work in her name, that's something so good. She can't be forgotten.
And what you're seeing here is actually a picture of the SPD detectives at Candy's crypt here in Spokane. They sent it to Joanne saying that it was just their little way of letting Candy know she could finally rest in peace. Detectives also told me they are now looking through other cold cases, hoping that the same DNA technology can also be used to solve other past crimes. If you'd like to read more about this case and our in-depth coverage, just text the word Candy to 509-448-2000. We'll send that link right to your phone.